You ever look around your home one evening and realize you've cleaned every corner, but something still feels heavy, not messy, just busy, like the air itself carries a quiet hum of unrest? I met a woman once who told me she'd spent an entire weekend decluttering. She filled bags with clothes, donated what she could, recycled what no longer made sense to keep. And when she was done, her house looked perfect. But that night, as she sat down with a cup of tea, she said the strangest thing. "It's funny, Stanley, my home is clean, but my mind still feels crowded." That line stayed with me, because sometimes peace isn't about what's around us. It's about what's still inside us. So today, I want to walk you through something I've learned, not about cleaning, but about clearing. 7 quiet burdens we all carry, some in our homes and some in our hearts. It started under her bathroom sink, a space most of us never think twice about. When she opened those little doors, dust drifted out like a sigh. Inside, old bottles of lotion, half-used tubes of ointment, travel shampoos from hotels that didn't even exist anymore. She laughed, then sighed again. "That's my life down there," she said. "Good intentions that never quite made it to the finish line." I knelt beside her, and what struck me wasn't the clutter, it was the story each bottle told. There was the lotion she bought when she used to go dancing, the hairspray from when she still teased her hair in the 90s, little ghosts of who she used to be. We stood there quietly, and I realized that space wasn't about disorganization, it was about identity. Sometimes the hardest part of growing older is not losing the past, it's accepting that you've outgrown it. When she finally cleared the space, she kept only what she needed: her face wash, toothbrush refills, 2 small baskets, one for first aid, one for toiletries. She looked at the empty shelf and said, "It's strange, Stanley. I feel lighter, and all I did was let go of who I'm not anymore." And I thought, that's not decluttering, that's healing. Her nightstand was next. You know, that little drawer beside the bed, the one meant for comfort but somehow becomes a resting place for forgotten things. Inside were 3 pairs of glasses, 5 pens, only one that worked, some loose change, a dried-out lip balm, and a note from her granddaughter, folded neatly between 2 receipts from years ago. She stared at it and said, "I don't even know how this happened." And I told her, it happens to all of us. We fill the spaces closest to us with little reminders of life's noise. The nightstand is where our day ends, and sometimes where our worries sleep too. She took a deep breath, emptied the drawer, and kept just 3 things: a notepad and pen that worked, a small jar of lavender cream, and the book she was truly reading. That was it. She smiled and said, "My sleep feels different now." I smiled back, because it wasn't about the drawer. It was about what it represented, that for the first time in a long while, she was ending her day with clarity, not clutter. There was one more place she hesitated to touch, a box in the closet labeled in faded marker, "Just in case." She laughed nervously. "Oh, that's my backup box, just in case I ever need something." When she opened it, I saw a collection of tiny fears. Old phone chargers, remote controls from TVs she no longer owned, single socks, manuals for appliances that had already been replaced. Every item whispered the same story: what if I need this someday? And yet, she hadn't touched that box in 10 years. We keep things just in case because it makes us feel safe, prepared, in control. But sometimes the very things we hold on to for comfort become the chains that hold us still. As she sorted through the box, she paused and said, "You know, the person I am today doesn't really need the things I needed back then." That line hit me deep. Because peace doesn't come from having everything ready. It comes from trusting that you'll figure it out when the time comes. She kept one small tool she actually used and a charger that fit her current phone. The rest, she let go. And when she did, she didn't look sad. She looked free. There's something sneaky about paper. It arrives quietly, a letter here, a coupon there, a bill, a reminder, a note. And before we know it, it becomes a mountain of good intentions. Her kitchen counter had one of those piles, neat enough to ignore, but tall enough to sigh at every time she passed. One morning, she sat down with a cup of coffee and decided to face it. She sorted every page into 3 folders. Keep, shred, recycle. What surprised her wasn't how much she threw away, it was how much anxiety disappeared with it. She said, "I didn't realize how much stress was hiding in plain sight." I told her, paper has power. It holds decisions, responsibilities, and noise, and when we let it pile up, it's like keeping our worries stacked in the corner. From that day on, she made a small rule: no paper stays on the counter for more than 2 days. Simple. Clear, a boundary, not a burden. And maybe that's what peace really is, not the absence of things, but the presence of boundaries that protect your calm. Then came the garage. If there's one place that quietly turns into a storage unit for our past lives, it's that space behind the door. At first, she said it was just where I keep a few things. But when we stepped inside, the air felt heavier. There was an old wooden table she swore she'd fix someday, 3 broken lamps waiting to be donated, boxes filled with decorations she hadn't opened in years, and behind them all a dusty bread machine from the early 2000s. We stood there for a long time. She didn't move, and then she whispered, "Every item here is something I thought I'd get back to someday." That word, someday, it carries so much quiet pain. You see, the hardest part of aging is not losing strength. It's realizing some dreams will remain unfinished, and making peace with that truth takes courage. She finally said, "It's okay, Stanley. I think I can let this go." We cleared space shelf by shelf. The sound of boxes shifting felt like exhaling, and when it was done, she looked around and said, "I didn't just clean a room. I made peace with what I didn't finish." That's something I'll never forget, because sometimes releasing an unfinished dream is the first step to living the life that's still ahead. A week later, I came back. She was smiling more now, moving slower but lighter. We stood in the kitchen. She looked up and said, "You ever check the top of your refrigerator, Stanley?" I hadn't. She brought a stool, climbed up, and peeked over the edge. A soft laugh escaped her lips. Soy sauce packets, old cookie tins, and a jar of honey that turned to stone. Out of sight, out of mind, and yet still there. That little shelf, high and forgotten, was a mirror of all the small things we delay. The tiny postponements that quietly build up until they become habits. She cleared it all that afternoon. When she finished, she left the top bare, not for show, but for peace. "I don't want perfection," she said. "I just want space that breathes." And then there was one last place she hadn't touched, a small wooden box under her bed. She called it her memory drawer. Inside, a scarf that still smelled faintly of her mother's perfume, a Christmas card from her late husband, a blouse from years when she felt young and strong. Her hands trembled as she lifted each item. "These aren't things, Stanley. They're pieces of me." I nodded, because I understood. Emotional clutter is the hardest kind to release. It's tied to identity, to grief, to love. She sat there quietly. Then she held the scarf to her chest and said, "I think I'm ready to remember without holding on." She folded it neatly into a memory box, took a photo of her husband's card and kept it digital. The blouse she donated. "And those gifts she never used," she whispered, "thank you," then let them go. When she looked up, there were tears but no sadness, just peace. I realized then, letting go doesn't mean losing, it means choosing. Choosing what deserves space in your world and what can rest gently in your past. After that day, her home felt lighter, but more than that, she did. She told me later, "It's strange, Stanley. I didn't know peace had a sound until I heard the quiet again." That line, that's the one that stayed with me, because clutter isn't just physical, it's emotional, it's mental, sometimes even spiritual. Every item we hold onto carries a decision, a story, a small piece of energy. And when we don't face them, they begin to pile up, not just in our homes, but in our hearts. Since that day, I've started to look at my own life differently. The garage of old hobbies, the drawer of forgotten letters, the corners of my heart I keep just in case. And I've learned something simple but profound. We don't find peace by having less. We find it by holding only what truly matters. Her home wasn't perfect when I left, but it was real, alive, breathing again. And as the morning sun poured through her kitchen window, she poured 2 cups of tea, set one across from mine, and said quietly, "I finally feel at home in my own home." I smiled. Because what she really meant was she finally felt at home within herself. Pause 4 seconds. So if your heart feels crowded these days, if your life feels heavy even when things look fine, maybe it's time to open a drawer. Not to organize, but to understand. Because peace doesn't come from having nothing. It comes from having only what truly matters. And that, my friend, is always worth keeping.